Once upon a time, the village of Brookfield had three railroad stations: the Prairie Avenue Station, also known as the Grosedale Station, the Gracious Hollywood Station, and the Cozy Congress Park Station. When the Hollywood Station was razed and it became known that the same fate awaited the other two stations, some people got together and decided to do something about it. When Greg Gall called for the creation of a Brookfield Historical Society in 1977, it all began. Four people responded: artist Esther Servac, Julius Seelar, who for many years had sponsored the art fair, Marianne Sorenda, newly elected village clerk, and May Buller, a lifelong resident. The time was ripe. These four made plans for the creation of a historical society. Many residents were still in shock because of the demolition of their village hall, which happened suddenly with little warning in the dead of winter. Others cried when the Congress Park Station met the Wreckers' Ball. People who had lived in Brookfield many years wanted to save a little piece of Brookfield's past to cherish and reminisce over. The time was ripe. Villagers decided they'd save one station. The new Brookfield Historical Society tried in vain to convince the village board to repair and restore the Prairie Avenue Station. The board voted instead to build a new station. The old one would be torn down 30 days after the new one was completed, unless some heroic crusaders who really wanted to save it could manage somehow, some way to move it to a new location. It was a bargain. The Burlington Railroad wanted only $1 for the building. Such a deal. At this point, the new Brookfield Historical Society, perhaps numbering about 30 members, had no more than a few $100s in its treasury. Could they possibly save the venerable old station? There was one thing more: where to put the bargain building when and if they decided to buy it. The village board offered to the new society the land where the old village hall had stood, if the society could prove it could raise enough money to pay for the moving job. The board said, "Once you've raised $25,000, come back." Amazingly, the few society members, with help from some generous businessmen and the community, were able to raise the money. In addition, the courageous little group crowned their efforts by winning for their quaint Victorian station a listing on the National Register of Historic Places. Now, our movie begins. This is the station in 1968, the year the village celebrated its Diamond Jubilee. For the occasion, the Burlington adorned the station with a bright new coat of paint. Afterward, the station was left, as in the past, largely exposed to the ravages of weather, aging, and becoming progressively more deteriorated. The new station was built immediately east of the old one. Here you see the old and the new side by side south of the tracks. The new building was completed on March 10, 1981. The old building would have to be moved within 30 days. Could this decrepit old building survive the move? These pictures show how badly the building right in the heart of Brookfield had been neglected. Many feared it was just too far gone to survive a move, but the optimists prevailed. Their view was endorsed by Advance Moving Company of West Chicago, the firm hired to handle the move. Mr. Peter Friesen of Advance Movers assured us there was no problem with moving the station. He had moved many buildings, older and larger. The morning of April 9, 1981 was delightful in every way. Excitement was everywhere. TV crews were out. Children were given the day off from school. All the great publicity in the paper encouraged spectators. The station sits here south of the tracks, ready to go. Cameras were everywhere. Peter Friesen was busy supervising his crew. Advance Moving had, in effect, constructed a mobile flatbed of steel crisscross beams supporting the structure. This flatbed of beams, in turn, was on complex sets of fat-tired wheels maneuvered as needed by the moving crew. The building had to be handled with care. It was 92 years old. At 9:30, Mr. Friesen gave the order. The truck inched forward to begin the move. Thousands watched. Several people screamed as the tall old brick chimney collapsed toward the east. Would the rest of the building go too? The move had to be made between 9:57 and 10:45 a.m., the only time no Amtrak trains were scheduled. Commuters on the 9:57 were quite amazed to look out the windows and see the old train station standing at the gate, just simply waiting for the train to go by. At this moment, in the flurry of people, cameras, and crewmen, Society Director Norm Skaman presented the Society's dollar bill to the Burlington representative, and the station belonged to the Brookfield Historical Society. Early that morning, crews from Western Union, the electric company, and the Burlington had disconnected approximately 120 utility wires strung across Prairie Avenue. As soon as the building passed, linemen got busy to reconnect all the wires. This necessary service added another several $1,000s to the cost of the move. Society members, ever mindful of the need for money, were selling Save Our Station buttons and antique souvenir bricks from the station platform, which were included in the station deal. One of the people with a movie camera was Shirley Bednar, not yet a member, whose husband Ed had commissioned her to take pictures of the move. This is the film you are now viewing. Over the tracks and inched around the corner onto Brookfield Avenue took about 2 hours. By this time, Fisher's Drugstore was all sold out of film. All the wires were reconnected. People on their lunch hours were able to view the spectacle. Another hour down one block of Brookfield Avenue, around the corner onto Forest. Crowds were still watching and hovering so they wouldn't miss a thing. Before the station arrived at its new site, it was mid-afternoon. Mr. Friesen's crew constructed a roadbed of railroad ties for their truck with the station in tow to descend to the foundation and exit after the station had been deposited. Viewers, young and old, marveled at the workers' skill and smoothness. The station perches precariously, ready for the final phase of the move. There was a slight delay when part of the substructure needed repair. Some welding was done on the spot, and the move went on. The end of a very exciting day came about 4 or 5 o'clock. The day had cost the Society about $20,000. The building looked nice in its new location. A new foundation had been prepared, courtesy of John Butkovich, one of Brookfield's longtime businessmen. Although the Society did not have cash on hand, Mr. Butkovich went ahead with the work. He said the Society could pay when the money was available. A protective fence was put up at once. Gestures such as Mr. Butkovich's encouraged us and helped convince us that we were doing something of real value for our community. Mr. Butkovich replaced crumbled bricks and completed the foundation and also one for the back stairs. The building had been moved. The cost of moving had all but depleted our treasury. With energy and enthusiasm, members plunged into the tremendous task of renovation. Volunteers reported on Saturday mornings. Ann Egger, head of the station committee, organized, scheduled, purchased supplies, provided work gloves, shopped for bargains. Everyone was positive, and in many ways, tedious tasks became tolerable. Our worst holes, of course, were in the roof. What do you do with such holes? We didn't know where to begin. The rotted eaves looked very bad, but the original slate shingle did not look too bad. Grass seed was planted and protected with straw. We longed for a nice lawn. Passers-by were curious as to the work being done. Some volunteered to help us. No volunteer was ever turned away, not even if they showed up with one arm in a cast, like Ed Bednar pushing our borrowed mower. There is a special place in heaven for the volunteer. There was lots of rubble that had to be cleared. Here the workers are busy cleaning up the spot where once there had been a monument to the village's World War II veterans. This cleanup took several Saturdays. Some replacement of rotted wood was done by Mr. Filipenko and his carpenters. This is a job that takes lots of skill and lots of patience. The new scaffold was put up for the workers to use. Why are ladies without escorts cordially invited? Perhaps it could be to scrape and paint the very tip-top gables. Can you think of a better way for Betty Haubenreiser to spend a Saturday in spring? Note the original light fixture on the left and also the concentration of the volunteer. You can see lots of elbow grease was needed. While work was going on, we did try our best to keep the premises neat and tidy. On occasion, Crown Disposal Company gave us a dumpster for our rubbish. Most often, our workers had to haul home a couple of bags of rubbish at the end of each day's work. The first contracted job was for our new chimney, erected by Caruso Masonry. The second-story front of the base of the station had always been occupied by the station master. We tried several methods of cleaning our bricks. All windows were kept clean and shiny. We wanted people to know we were proud of our building. The upstairs gable seems to plead for paint. No one could deny that paint was needed. The scroll work, the shingles, the old trim, these had been somewhat sheltered by the overhanging roof. The ornamentation does help disclose the charming character of the original building. In spring of 1981, our front yard was a truly discouraging sight. The borrowed ladder goes to our second floor. Since there was no exterior storage, most equipment was brought in the morning and taken home at night by our volunteers. All windows had to be stripped. Many were painted closed. The many layers of paint seemed inches thick. 90 years' paint had to be removed from the baggage room doors. The job was started by Mickey Schwarm and Warren Egger, with no Saturday overtime. Another stripper at work, Maru Fried, walked in one day and offered to help. Several months after the station moved, there was a big Summer's End celebration. The new station was to be formally dedicated, and also the remodeled and refurbished shops on Burlington Avenue. Everyone was surprised and delighted with the great turnout. We were out in force selling our notepaper and our very own T-shirts. We were always and still are busy with public relations and telling people what we're doing and seeking their support. Music, a free prize drawing, and a chance to see the interior of the new station brought out the crowds. All station strippers and scrapers had the day off. Society members Norm, Cindy Egger, Anna Mae Johnson, and others socialize and sell. Ann Egger represented us at the ribbon cutting ceremony. Village President Pierce McCabe and Claude Lemire, chairman of this event, are shown along with Ann Egger. How do you make a ribbon cutting dramatic? The speakers, who envisioned great futures for the Burlington shops, were applauded long and loud. Our director, Norm Skaman, was on hand, and he also made some inspirational remarks to the crowd. Meanwhile, on the other side of the tracks, the old station had a nice new back stairway constructed for just the cost of the lumber by Mr. Filipenko. Window restoration was a #1 priority. Cleaning and scraping resumed. Mitch Sorrenda did his best on an upstairs window. Some of the windows were the original rolled glass. How many pairs of hands have cleaned these windows since 1889? Mickey really is delighted with her assignment, having a lot of fun on the upstairs porch. Maru is also becoming an expert. The fine points of sanding and scraping were mastered by many, including Betty Ann and Lillian Rizenga. Our humble volunteers had to be coaxed to turn and smile at the camera. They just wanted to do their job. However, it is worth a little coaxing to get a nice smile from one of them. Those with a good sense of balance and a penchant for painting quickly moved up in the organization. Warren and Betty discussed the gable, the new chimney. The holes in the roof had been one of the first priorities. After they were fixed, a new roof was needed. The months of scraping had finally paid off. All windows could now be opened freely. A little paint does work wonders. Among our volunteers were John Zdenek and Ed Novak, two young people from Cicero. They were both seniors in high school at the time. John was riding by the station one day and stopped to inquire. He stayed on to help us, eventually became an officer. Here they're spreading gravel for us. What a blessing that gravel was. These shots show some of the front detail around the upstairs windows. The old slate tile is original and intact. The upstairs was last occupied until March 1987 by Mr. and Mrs. Chuck Feely. Once again, the landscapers are at work nurturing the $400 worth of seed that had been sown. As the green appeared and filled in, the whole corner took on a great appearance. No door in the metropolitan area was sanded better than this one. There was truly no loafing at the station. The lavatory had its original 1889 fixtures. Our boiler in the luggage room had been inspected and approved. Volunteers did have a great curiosity as to what was behind the plasterboard walls and the dropped ceiling in the waiting room. Since the ceiling was most accessible, it was decided to remove that and have it replaced with something more Victorian. Chris Stack volunteered to do this work. As the ceiling tiles were removed, they were placed in paper bags. Workers had to carry debris home with them and put it in with their own trash. The original ceiling, when exposed, was a patchwork showing the outlines of the 1889 separate men's and ladies' waiting rooms, each with its own lavatory, and the station master's center section. Some portions of an original mullioned window were also found in the attic. Our first winter brought near disaster. In 20-degree below weather, a bathtub pipe in the upstairs bathroom froze when a small window blew open. Water from below kept flowing, and through the grace of God shot out through the open window and instantly froze as it hit the outside. Neighbors and the police called us, and a brave volunteer succeeded in turning off the water and securing the window. If all that water had sprayed inside the building, it would have done much more damage. Diane Cook lived down the block and bundled up to view Brookfield's frozen Niagara. 20 below zero is bad enough. When you add to it the ice cascade, it looks even colder. This is a sight none of us ever want to see again. With sprucing up, the new roof, and some tender, loving care, our Victorian beauty was starting to regain her self-respect. Joe McRoofing, a fledgling company, generously agreed to do our roofing for only the cost of the materials. We were really encouraged by the great change. The old and the new roofing side by side. 1 year after the station moved, we had our first celebration of the relocation. We were glad to take some time off and party a little. We wanted everyone to come out and see all that had been done. The lawn was developing, the station was weather-tight. We strung flags to attract passers-by. Inside, we had everything clean, shined, and polished. Our hostesses for the day were May Buller, Shirley Bednar, Julia Seelar, and Marge Stanton. Our precious station model was on display and watched over by Chris. Among the many guests were Norm Skaman and Eleanor Hoban. A touch of elegance was provided by the silver, the fresh flowers, and the music of our very talented member, Regina Martinez. It was truly a memorable day for all of our hard-working society members, as well as the public. The model of the station was constructed by a young architecture student named Danny Cook. His gesture in choosing our building for his project made us feel really good. His model was presented to us at a special ceremony and was on display at Village Hall before it came to rest in the station. Anne and Shirley placed the model in a sylvan setting so we could visualize what our station will look like when our restoration is complete. The building is visually interesting and charming from every angle. Resources continued to come to us in many strange and mysterious ways, and some not so mysterious. Ed's arm had healed. We needed dirt, so he took his little wagon and went to get it. The party was over and the crew was back with rakes, shovels, and work gloves. Everyone pitching in to pamper the new lawn. Weeds and rocks always had to be removed. The developing lawn certainly was given much tender, loving care. Our fun-loving cameraman, interested in all aspects of the work, endeavored to get the best possible angles of all of the crew as they landscaped. The bricks from the old platform had been thrown in with our dollar purchase. Our workers had committed no crime, but they were assigned to the rock pile. The village's Department of Public Works agreed to let us use part of their yard on Eberly to store the bricks. The bricks and lots of sand and gravel were dumped in two big bumpy piles. After a while, the bricks became a nuisance for the Public Works Department, and we were told we had to stack them and move them more against the fence so they'd be less in the way. Our crew, ranging in age from 7 to 70, responded with their usual nobility. Other suburbanites relaxed on torrid summer evenings. We met with work gloves and bandanaed heads to pile the bricks just so on pallets that we had begged someone for. Director Norm Skaman and Proud Society members stand here in August 1982. We had a ceremony and an unveiling of our refurbished sign showing that our National Register listing, lost when the building was taken from its original site, had been restored. There is no describing the sense of satisfaction and pride that we felt, and the community with us. The task ahead is to complete what was so boldly started in 1977 by just a few people. We promised Brookfield that we would save the station, restore it to its 1889 appearance, and make a small local museum. We want to keep that promise. We certainly must express our appreciation to our charter members, our early members, some of whom are listed here, and to the many, many people who have contributed to our phonathons, the many businessmen who have helped us, encouraged us, and advised us. Truly, this has been a community effort. Much has been done, but there is still much to do.